Hello, good evening and welcome. I'm Karima Brown and you're watching Political Exchange, where we unpack Africa's political economy. After nearly 20 years of democracy, South Africa has made great strides, but still lags behind when it comes to deracializing the economy. According to the National Empowerment Fund, black people, who comprise over 90% of the population, own only 3% of the economy in terms of market capitalization on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, a situation that is neither desirable nor sustainable. Joining me to discuss how to change the state of affairs is Chief Executive Officer of the Black Business Council, Xolani Qubeka, and Zweli Sapula of the National Empowerment Fund. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Let me start with you, Xolani. The statistics, paints a very, very bleak picture. What are we doing wrong?
Well, I think part of the problem since 1994 is that we focused more on people buying other people's stakes in existing large companies. And unfortunately, whilst a few people have become rich, those deals have done nothing to increase the economic cake, to create new jobs. So in essence, we have done a lot which has come up really to nothing. We're still where we were.
Mm-hmm. Now, government has initially had black economic empowerment as a strategy to fast-track black people into the economy. It's now been broadened, to increase participation and not benefit a small few. But broad-based black economic empowerment is also not doing the trick. So what is it that we need in addition to that strategy to actually ramp up the participation of the majority?
I think we need to relook, at government policy, as it were. While BE, has got its policies right, the only problem is how do you then implement? Now, the focal point rather, has been more on trying to get companies to comply. Now, when you look at the instruments that are used for compliance, they do have unintended consequences, because when you want then to match small companies and big companies, you find that 100% owned black companies, in fact, do not comply because of the elements that are used to get them to comply, to the extent that majority-owned white companies end up getting better scores in terms of compliance. Therefore, we need to totally repeal the current legislative tools that engender empowerment, to make sure that we really focus more on the entrepreneur rather than on the various elements of the scorecard. Mm-hmm. We need to look at how do we instigate economic growth through entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring you in here, Zweli. You recently, the National Empowerment Fund recently gave the Black Business Council a grant of 3 million rand. Surely, it's a paltry sum of money in real terms. What more is it that you can do to, in fact, assist black business from the National Empowerment Fund side to change the situation?
I think the one key thing which you find in South African economy is that, as Xolani already mentioned, a lot of people have focused on buying into existing businesses, and you're not getting enough people starting up their own companies which can actually grow to be the size of your Sasols or your Metal Steel or your Iscos of the past. So what we are looking at is saying, how do we then develop industrialists who will actually produce companies that will become the same size as those companies which were created in the old days. If you look in the past 15, 20 years, you haven't seen another Sasol come up, you haven't seen another Isco come up. And the main reason for that is that the people who have the ideas and have the capabilities to do that, however, don't have the funding necessary to actually take them to the next level. And that what we believe in is that stepping in and assisting them in actually being able to step up from that stage and actually be able to focus on the project while they know that financially the project can actually be funded. And what you're finding a lot is a lot of black entrepreneurs, black industrialists, if you can call them that, don't have that access to that funding. So you get people with great ideas who then end up doing nothing with them because they don't have access to the seed funding that is so necessary to actually build large organizations such as your Sasols and your Iscos of the past.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, access to finance is a critical issue when one is doing a startup. Quantify for me, if you will, Xolani, just how large a problem this is, particularly for black startups.
Well, I think the problems are large. I think maybe one also needs to say contextually, you find a number of people who want to get into business. Either they get into business because either they've lost their jobs, they've not planned properly. Mm-hmm. They are not innovative. So from a Black Business Council perspective, we want to engender those people who could come forward, who are entrepreneurs, who are innovative, who have excellent ideas that could be supported. Mm-hmm. For instance, if you look currently within the tourism sector, particularly in Soweto, there is an emergence of these new brands, that are restaurants in Soweto, as an example. From a BBC perspective, we want to identify those and give those support, so that we can help them scale up, mm-hmm. so that they're not only waiting for tourists in Soweto, but they can be in Cape Town, CDB, they can be in Sandton. So we need to make sure that we bring the right tools, the right interventions, but to the right people. Right now, we've poured a lot of money into bottomless pit, because state agencies have got targets to meet. Therefore, when they go to the portfolio committee, all they would be saying is that we have supported 300,000 business plans, but
whether those businesses are actually viable or not.
Exactly, mm-hmm. and whether there was right criteria. Mm-hmm. So for us, what is important is to begin to say, where are those people with great minds, with big ideas, but who lack the necessary support? Mm-hmm. And we find that from a BBC's perspective and the NEF, there is congruence of mind. The NEF mandate talks to our objectives, things that for us as BBC that do not make us sleep is the absence of companies that can grow, that could be mm-hmm. scaled up.
Let me bring in Zweli here. Zweli, let me quote you what ABSA's Sisa Nchona recently said. He said, a business without a customer or a client is not a business at all. Find the market and the money will find you. And this was in response to the complaint that banks are not making finance available to small business. Do you share this sentiment?
To a large extent, you do need to have a market for you to be able to sell any product and be able to generate money, so you are able to be self-sustaining. We believe that in South Africa there is a lot of market. It's just that most of the people don't have access to the market because of their small scale of the businesses that they run. Particularly if you think of the tourism industry, which Xolani was talking about, little restaurants sitting in Soweto who are only able to capture the smaller size markets and not able to actually reach out and branch out into the rest of the bigger markets where actually they can actually be more sustainable. And that's where the biggest problem is. How do you take that guy who's sitting in the backyard who doesn't have access to the big scale market from that to actually a place where they can actually be self-sustaining and be able to grow? And that is essentially what we try to achieve, which is why we believe that putting in the seed money that we put into BBC would actually be able to unlock that, being able to take those guys who don't have that access and bring them to the limelight where they can actually get the access to the markets so that they will be able to be self-sustaining.
Now, obviously, money is one thing, and it's a critical element of what is required to run a successful small business. But things like training, mentorship, is equally important. What else besides financial assistance does the National Empowerment Fund actually provide, to small businesses and to organizations like the Black Business Council to ensure that we actually get, support behind small businesses?
As part of our mandate, it stretches actually beyond just providing financial support. We also look at providing the non-financial support, particularly in mentoring small businesses and helping them to be sustainable. Because the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to put money in a black hole where you keep putting money in and nothing ever happens. So the idea is to always provide not only funding, but also provide the non-financial support such as mentoring, which you mentioned. We have a very robust mentoring process where most of our companies that we've invested into, we've actually provided mentors who will actually help the entrepreneurs with their finances, help them with their marketing strategy, help them with operations, your general things that you need for a business to be sustainable. So that is something that we believe firmly in. We don't believe in just giving out the money and not being able to give a person the support and giving them the ability to actually make the most of the opportunity. The one thing that we believe at the NEF is that if you're going to be empowering someone, give them the best chance of success, not just
and what is that
money.
Best chance? If you have to pick out of 10 things, what is the best thing that you can give to a small business to make it work?
The one key thing is proper mentorship. Helping someone. Can you imagine someone who's never run a big business, someone who's run a spaza shop, for example, and now you're asking them to run a supermarket. They wouldn't know how to run their cash management. You need to get someone to actually help them with their cash management. They wouldn't know how to market their business. You need someone to come in and help them with marketing their business. You need someone to help them with the operations. How do they manage stock? How do they manage all of those intricate issues that are specific to that industry? And what we do is that we get mentors who are experts in that industry and who then can provide relevant assistance to the people that we would have funded.
Just quickly, the idea that you provide these non-financial services are important, but is there a figure that the NEF can give us in terms of the money that government has set aside to actually assist small businesses? What figure do we have, if any?
Oh, I can't give you that number because I'm not sure what that number is. But in terms of, I can speak in terms of what NEF has. As part of our planning, we always have put together a budget for mentors and non-financial assistance, which, by the way, spans beyond just businesses. We also look at helping people with create a culture of saving. That's something else that we also do. And we generally put together a budget on an annual basis of close to between 3 and 5 million rands for smaller businesses. And obviously, depending on which space you're in, for example, the fund I head up, which is a strategic project fund, we have an allocation of 200 million rands per year to develop projects from scratch and develop them up to commercial stage. And during that process, then we become heavily involved in the projects where we actually walk the road with the entrepreneur while they're developing their project until the project is made commercial.
One of the big problems that small businesses always raise is the amount of red tape involved in getting a business off the ground. There's an incredible bureaucracy. Is that generally the experience of your members in the Black Business Council?
Yes, I think getting business started in South Africa is a problem. I mean, just a simple thing of registering a name. You have to first reserve a name. That will take 6 weeks. Thereafter, you then have to then register the company itself. That will take probably another 2 months. And then a simple thing like applying for a telephone line. A telephone line will probably, whereas in other countries, you'll get a telephone line in a day. I mean, it takes you 6 weeks rather, just to get a telephone line. But I think fundamentally the issues that we have to deal with are issues of competency. I think government has put a number of support mechanisms and funds, but unfortunately those funds get depleted because you sometimes support even those SMMEs who have no chance of survival. So from the BB perspective, we're trying to pull all the government resources together from CEDA, from DTI, and that is one of the reasons why we're putting this Black Industrialist Development Forum together, to ensure that we can pull all the available government resources together and make sure that we have a one-stop window via the BBC to ensure that people are taken to the right direction, people could be accessed, could access the necessary resources for them to start. Also, we need to work on the mindset. There is a lot of dependency, there is a lot of entitlement. So we also need to make sure that we deal with those things. Another issue is that of work ethic. And we would be coming up as part of this, supporting this Black industrialist notion, to make sure that people understand the notion of work. People understand that it is not enough for you to say you've been awarded a contract, but what do you do? How do you grow that money? How do you motivate your people, to grow? What do best industrialists do? So it's the whole a milieu of things that we need to do, and the BBC would want to mobilize all these type of issues through this Black Industrialist Development Forum.
Okay, we're taking a short break now, but when we return, we continue our conversation with the Black Business Council and the National Empowerment Fund on how to fast-track Black participation in the South African economy.